Right, here we are. Last bit. The last bit of the essay. Right? Good faith. Balancing conflicting interests. Fault, morality. It's so straightforward. You're just getting the idea of contract and freedom of contract and seeing it how it measures up to those concepts. Do you know what? Let me tell you something. You know this last bit of the essay? If you spend a little bit of time and make sure you memorize those 2 or 3 points, actually 3 or 4 points, for little revision, you get a lot of essay. For little revision, you get a lot of essay because you get 4 different areas that you're showing the examiner you know about, and those 4 areas you're able to analyse alongside freedom of contract and contract law, which is brilliant. Right, so let's look at good faith. The ideas of reliance, responsibility are also present in contract law. For contracts and commerce to work, there must be an expectation that both parties will do what they're supposed to do. What's that? That's just the definition of good faith. Corrective justice can be seen as applied in contract law. Yeah, it is. If someone doesn't do what they said they were going to do, the law takes the corrective justice approach and sorts it out. And it does that by applying damages in loss of bargain. Simple linear argument. Okay, so your argument is, to recap, that in contract law there is a concept of good faith, and the law uses corrective justice to ensure that that is achieved. Simple. Then you're going to say, but there are limits to this, and you're going to use Victoria. Simple. Yeah? You're going to say, there are limits to this corrective justice, and that is only losses that are reasonable within the contemplation of the parties may be recovered. Okay? Perfect. Yeah, and you go through that case and you apply that case to the exam. Yeah? Goes on to say, good faith is incorporated as an underlying principle that contracts of insurance. We know that. You have to tell the truth, don't you? If you get car insurance and you don't tell them that you've got points, when you go to make a claim, they give you the middle finger. Yeah? So good faith is there for insurance. What's the point you're making in your essay? Here's another example of good faith insurance contracts. Yeah? And then finally, businesses. Okay, what the law does is attempt to balance the interest of the party by legislation interpretation of the contract, and a common law with smattering of equity. Alright, let me explain that to you. The law tries to balance the conflicting interests of different parties based on their agreement. Yeah, they go on, they interpret it, and they use case law and fairness to get to the decision. However, when it does, that's a lot of things to juggle. When it does that, you can have a lack of certainty, and then it uses this example here to show that there can be a lack of certainty. Yeah, nice and easy, right? Simple argument. So, right, next argument, balancing conflicting interests. They define it. Judges, so you do that in the exam as well, because you define it, then analyse it. Judges often have to balance the competing interests of their judgments. Yeah, right. They have to balance the competing interests of their judgments. This can lead to unusual results. So that's your critique, isn't it? Your critique is that judges are balancing conflicting interests, but in balancing those conflicting interests, you can get unusual results and uncertainty. And that affects the rule of law. You know, that long linear argument. Okay? Parliament also sets out balancing rights between contract and party. Alright? And they essentially say the argument that they're putting forward is simply that you can have, the law does balance conflicting interests. Then it says the limitations are here. There you go. Conflicting decisions. Beautiful paragraph to write in the exam. Remember these 2 cases here and just say how they're odds the exclusion clause was invalid here, yeah, and exclusion clause was implied here, yeah, even if she couldn't read. So they're opposing cases. Yeah, you can say, look, here's your inconsistencies. This is what happened when you give too much interpretive power to courts. This is what happened when you have too much going on in terms of what the law's trying to do, and it gets overcomplicated and you end up with crap like this. Yeah? Salah. Yeah? So, go on to say, they talk about holiday cases, don't worry. You've got your points there. That's enough for your exam. Alright, that's enough for you. Right, principles of fault. Fault has two distinct elements, responsibility and liability. Responsibility is seen as one theory in contract law. A misrepresentation isn't. So what have they done? When you talk about fault in contract law, they want you to talk about misrepresentation. Simple. An untrue statement of fact, yeah, which induces the other party. So whenever you talk about fault in contract law, you talk about misrepresentation. And you know about them. The categories are here. Innocent, negligent, fraudulent. Yeah, and they talk about this case, which you're Smith. Okay? So what they're trying to show you, they're trying to make a really basic point for you guys, saying that there is fault in contract law. Look at misrepresentation. Then they go on to analyse misrepresentation. Okay? I think you can hear my kids in the back. I'm sorry. Alright. So, let's go here. Breach of contract depends on the level of blameworthiness to determine an inter party's rights. This will determine whether a person can end the contract and must continue with it. There should be a claim for compensation. The cases of Pussard and Spears and Bettini illustrate this. Yeah. So, what's the point they're actually making? They're saying that fault depends on. Breach depends on the fault. Simple. So they're saying fault's not just presented, not just in misrepresentation. You can see the idea of fault in breach, and obviously whoever breached it is at fault. Simple, easy. Okay, and they give you examples here, and they talk about the Law Commission. They talk about Parking Eye. What's the brief summary of fault? There is fault in contract law. Look at misrepresentation, Smith, and look at breach and Pussard. Done. Finished. Move on. Go to university. Morality. A rule is something that influences the way in which we behave. Yeah, and goes on, talks generally about morality. Alright, many rules are neither morally binding or they have anything to do with morals. They're just there as essentially regulatory and just for society to run in a chaotic and a cohesive way. Alright, these have evolved to scope with new situations, improve the sport, and they're talking about rules here. There are sanctions here too, but there's not always illegality. Okay, rules might also come through custom or practice. We know about this. Morality is generally to do with beliefs affected by religion. You know about this, you know about that. Yeah, but my question is, what's that got to do with contract? Okay, here's the answer. Contracts can be declared void because of the association with immorality. Case of Pierce. My family are making a lot of noise in the background. Yeah. So, simple. When we talk about law and morality, we can talk about void contracts, Pearson Brooks. You remember that prostitute case? Yeah? And other examples are Parkinson, Dan, Napier. Yeah? Simple. Right? Today there are frequent press reports about contracts being obtained without bribery. We know about that. Yeah? And then it also talks about economic duress. Alright? And it talks about Derry and Peak. You know about that. Okay? Essentially, if you talk about morality, morality is present in contract law when you look at the idea here of void contracts and economic duress. Simple. Last point. Freedom of contract allows, subject to illegality, any contract to be made. It may, however, be viewed that some contracts that so outrageous that they are moral but really illegal under Victorian Moneylenders Act. That is their analysis of that. Yeah? That there is freedom of contract, but there is a limit to it. Sorry, it's there. That is it. That is literally all you need to know. You're probably like, oh, that's loads. It's not. If you write it on a piece of paper, that's not much at all. It's just a little essay plan. I'm going to try and make one more video with the headings of the essay plan, but I need to set up some technical equipment to do that. Okay, I need to set up, what do you call it, the document reader, which I managed to get, yeah. So the first video is online here, you can see, yeah, if I play it, it works. Yeah, you can go on there, have a look. The second video should have uploaded. What's going on here? It's on 58%, so that's still uploading. I'll upload that as soon as that's done. That can go on. 7 minutes remaining for that. That's a bit of a long video. And the third video here, which is only 10 minutes. So you're done. I'm going to stop it now. Thank you. God bless. You're the best.